in the last, I started this account 9 months ago,
Wow.
and I'm going to hit 1 million probably before the end of the month.
Yeah.
Right.
But it's
And the only
authenticity.
reason that happened is because I will make fun of both sides. There's not a single video I have that is a paid partnership.
It's awesome.
I don't take money from anyone. I don't take sponsorships from anyone. I make my content what I want to say. So it's authentic.
Funny how.
Come here. Come hither. Yeah, he's crazy, see? Who are you?
We interrupt this program to bring you a special report.
It always threw me off because, like, I grew up being told that, government officials and lawyers, how do you tell when they're lying? Their mouth is moving. But for some reason, we have become so trusting of
Yeah.
government. It's like, and when people say that, they're like, well, you trust Trump? It's like, no, I don't. I don't
Right.
trust Trump at all. I think Trump's a fucking cold-hearted dude who's like a businessman. Like, I don't trust him, but I just look at the history and I go,
Yeah.
hey, look, I thought he was going to be a shitty president. I thought he was pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, lesser of two evils, you hear a lot of people say, but really at the end of the day, it's almost like the fact that these are our only options is fascinating when
Yeah.
it kind of unveils the government like for what they really are. And
Well,
that
yeah,
is,
380 million Americans, and these are our two best choices.
yeah,
Like,
come on.
really?
Yeah. And especially when you see like from a government standpoint, like, if you're a Democrat, right? Which I don't know if you noticed it in my content, but I voted for Trump, but I also voted for Obama on the first term. So like
Same here.
Yeah, so I'm kind of back and forth. I sit in the middle of a lot of issues. But in terms of like, I needed to speak out these past couple of years in particular, which my content is usually never political. I've had a lot of people on my podcast. Like I just had conservative Ant on a few
I love
shows.
Ant.
Yeah, he's the best. He's the man. And I'm in Florida, so he's like really close to me. So we had a really good talk. And I've only been getting kind of aggressive ever since this shit happened to me during the pandemic. Because like a lot of people, I mean, everyone's getting affected. But I think it's really interesting. And I've been following Tucker Carlson a lot too. And he said something that was really, really kind of hit me a little bit. And I think a lot of people need to start thinking about this is it's okay that they fuck up because every government in the world fucks up. There's nothing perfect. But when they start lying about it and don't own up to it,
Yep.
that's where it's like, I was like, I got a platform. I'm sick of like,
Yeah.
being.
That was
goo
my
goo
biggest
gaga
problem
all
with
this.
COVID. It wasn't the response.
Right.
It was the lies. It was like,
Yeah.
it's like, look, it's like, I get it. It's something that you've never dealt with before. You're gonna screw shit up. It's not gonna be a perfect response. We're gonna mess things up. But when you fuck up, just say, hey, we shouldn't have done that.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of weird how we. I just did a video on this just this morning because a couple people commented on a few things that I said about the middle, and I'm not necessarily a centrist, but like I would vote more for Trump than RFK, even though I dig a lot of what RFK to me is interesting, and I want to get your opinion on him too. But RFK to me I like for a couple of reasons. Number one, Biden didn't approve security for him, and legally, historically, you have to have security if you're running for president, and the president is the one that signs off on that. Like
And let's be real, Kennedys are prone to getting assassinated. So, like,
I wasn't going to say it, but you're right. If anything, he should have double security.
especially when he's in Dallas.
Right. So, I mean, the fact that he didn't, and still he had to have private security himself, that to me is like, this guy he's got to have something. Like, he's on to something here. Because they're doing the same thing with Trump, right? Is what can I do to keep him out of office? So that automatically to me is like, ooh, he might be a good candidate. Because, again, they did the same thing with Bernie. Like, I wasn't the biggest Bernie supporter, but, like, I would choose Bernie over Hillary. I would choose Bernie over Biden. Like, so to me, I'm like, okay, something's happening to where they're pushing these folks out for a reason. And whether they're anti-establishment or they have some type of ideology that doesn't bode well for the U.S. government. And that I love because they're onto something then. It's usually the people that go against the grain typically are the ones that you want to follow. And I think that's why, Trump had so much traction to the day, obviously, because of that. So that to me is a little bit fascinating. And of course, I love what his take and his book on Fauci. I thought that was great. I don't know if you read that. But that type of stuff is interesting to me because I look at a candidate like that, kind of like a Vivek, where these folks, they're not afraid to take the punches and they're not afraid to talk about the hot issues The only thing I think that's holding him back, unfortunately, is his voice.
Yeah,
think
I
he's-
cannot stand hearing him talk.
dude, it's, and this is coming from a guy, I think, like this term with Biden, I caught myself a lot where I'm like, if he's on, I'm not going to listen to him. Even if, he was Trump and Trump acted that way, I wouldn't listen just because it's hard to hear him talk. So I've always been like, I've always had the belief of like a president necessarily, even though his role is to be our speaker, right? And to speak for us and to represent us with foreign relations and things like that. But in terms of like media, I always thought to myself, I think it would be better if he was like more, like Kiefer Sutherland and that what's that one series Kiefer Sutherland was in? You ever watch that series
You're talking about a designated survivor.
Yes. Such a great series. But like he was very kind of like standoffish. He wasn't on the news all the time. Like I RFK, if he did that and he didn't speak, winning.
Yeah, but see, my problem with RFK isn't so much his voice. It's to me, he is Trump to a lesser extent. Right. So like because I vote, I mean, I'm not single issue, but there are very particular issues that are important to me. And economy is a huge, huge issue. Like, and I don't see RFK's experience when it comes to that. And so the way I look at it is if it were RFK versus Biden, RFK would have my vote. It wouldn't even be close. RFK would easily have my vote. Sure. But when I look at it and I go, I have Biden, I have Trump, and then I have distilled Trump. I have kind of sort of liberal Trump, which is how I look at RFK. Because RFK, like the problem is I see a lot of people making their judgments on him based on what he said since he said he was running for president.
Sure.
And it's like what I do is anytime I'm looking at a candidate, I look at what they were saying before they were running for office.
Deep dive.
And when I look at RFK before he runs for office, he is a no experience conspiracy theorist troublemaker, which I love the troublemaker part. And I don't mind the conspiracy theorist part. But if I have the ability to elect a guy who for 4 years made the economy better and made the border secure and made international relations better, those are my three key points. Like those are my three biggest things.
Yeah.
Like I said, RFK'd get my vote if Trump wasn't there. Like I wanted Vivek. I didn't want Trump to run again. I wanted Vivek as the candidate.
Same.
Because I believed in everything Vivek said. Sure, is he a politician who's full of shit? Probably. Yeah. But again, I don't expect I don't go into it expecting my politicians to be honest. Because I've never met one. I've never met an honest politician, so I'm not going to start expecting them. But yeah, I mean, so Trump was down on my list. Just RFK's a little bit farther down on my list than Trump.
Yeah. No, and that's a great point too. And I think that's where people are kind of in this situation where they're like lesser of the two evils, right? Like that's where they think is. And I think that's the biggest misconception with politics as a whole, because like you said, you have to have, as a citizen, you have to have a couple points. And weirdly enough, a lot of our points aren't aligned, which is crazy, especially if you talk to a liberal. And like I said, I'm more centrist than anything, but usually when I talk on my show or if I do videos, a lot of people just think I'm Republican, which is fine, no big deal, because I do vote Republican. But
hey, I'm a registered independent, so
are you? Okay, same. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And when I tell people that, they're like, "Oh, but you believe in the Second Amendment, you did." And I go, "Dude, what you're doing is you're taking literally common sense. Like this is the problem with politics, is it puts in these things into these buckets that technically shouldn't be in politics, right? Because they're in the Constitution. They were written. The reason they were written was to actually get politicians out of it. Is to give rights to the citizens to say fuck the government. These are staying for the rest of the time the world is here. This is staying. It's not moving. And that's what makes this country so great. But when the government started dipping their hands, the little fucking shiesty fingers into these things and playing around with, abortion and gun laws and, all this type of stuff, it gets squirrely. And it even gets even more squirrely because then you take this system that was built, a couple hundred years ago, this gorgeous, unbelievable system. And then you kind of whittle it down into now we're the quote unquote United States of America, but really we're divided because every state has the opportunity to overrule these bills and to kind of do their own thing. I'm in Florida, so thankfully places like Florida.
You got to say, I'm in Florida as well. We got the
really?
census protecting us. Yeah.
Yeah, dude. So thank God. But like if you're in California, not only are you making like after all your taxes, you're only making 20% of the labor that you put in, but now you're kind of forced to live in the state that doesn't necessarily follow everything that this country was founded on, which is fascinating because when you talk to people that live in California, especially the hardcore left, they're like, to me, they say you were hardcore right. I'm like, how are you not? Like, dude, this is common sense, bro.
Well,
this
to
is
me,
not...
that's the biggest difference between the right and the left, as far as I see. Like, sure, there's tons of like random stuff we disagree on,
right?
But what I look at it from a leftist politician or a right side politician, what I see is right side politicians are focused on doing things that change law, that change policy, that change tax structures and things like that. But on the left side, what I see is they want politicians who want to change the principles upon which we were founded, right? So like I don't see politicians on the right wanting to restrict the free speech of anyone, right? But I do see that on the left. I don't see anybody on the right saying they want to restrict the constitutional right to carry a firearm. I see that on the left. I see, when it comes to the press or anything really.
It's almost like they're going down the line.
Yeah, they're just saying, what do we need to do? Okay, we got Amendment 1.
Right.
What do we disagree with in this? Amendment 2. And like people gave Gavin Newsom a lot of shit because I hate Gavin Newsom. I think he's a parasite on the state of California. But he said, I'm going to put forth a constitutional amendment to change the second amendment. I want a what's the word?
Where he overturns the...
Yeah, he wanted to create a constitutional amendment to change that.
Yeah, kind of like Texas tried to do.
Yeah, and everybody was like, "No, you can't do that. You can't do that." And it was like, "Hold on, he's allowed to do that. He's doing it the right way." What he's not saying is, "I'm going to outlaw firearms." What he's saying is, "I'm going to utilize the constitutional process to try to change something that I think needs to be changed."
That's right.
Awesome. I made a video in favor of him. People lost their minds on me. Where I was like, "I still think he's terrible."
Yeah.
But what he's saying is, I'm going to do it the way I'm supposed to do it for something I believe in. Like you can believe that we're not supposed to have firearms. That's perfectly fine. That's your opinion. Yeah. But if you want to change it, there's a constitutional process.
Yeah, that's right.
And that's the thing is like nothing we want on the right requires changing of the Constitution.
Yeah.
Everything people want on the left, boy, do we have to modify some shit.
Dude, and it's literally everything. I mean, again, the big video that I get the most hate on, there's a few of them, but I'm sure like you're a stranger to
No, my comment sections are nothing but love, man.
Yeah, it's ironic too, because like typically your followers are probably see more of your values, but like, the algorithm's like, ooh, we're going to give him the fucking opposite of his followers.
Well, there's a reason why in my videos, the first hashtag I use on every video, first 3 hashtags, Biden 2020, Biden
Harris.
Because I want my videos to get funneled to these people.
Yeah, no, same, dude. I do everything. I even had someone call me out on it. They're like, because I do RFK, I do Trump 2024, Biden Harris, and they're like, why do you do this? Because I want to touch everybody, bro. Like I don't want to be on one side because that's how you get, that's how you get meta.
Well, that's if you saw my recent video. I said, liberals, grab your popcorn. I'm about to shit on a Republican because I was making fun of Michael McCall, who wrote the TikTok ban bill, but also invested $1.15 million in Meta in the time period that they were arguing it. And
it was like weeks before, wasn't it?
Yeah. So he wrote the March 3rd. He wrote the original TikTok ban bill. March 22nd, 23rd, and 28th. He invested $150,000 each in Meta. And then once we found out that it was going to be included in this new spending bill, in April, he invested $700,000 more in Meta. And then, of course, he signed the ban bill 3 days later. So in the course of 40 days, he wrote the ban bill and then invested $1.15 million and then passed the bill.
It's fucking insane.
Yeah.
I don't even want to see Pelosi's portfolio. I bet that was going through the roof.
All you got to do is go to Unusual Whales. They track it.
Do they? Okay, I'm checking.
Yeah, so Unusual Whales has a Pelosi stock tracker where what they do is they set people up with investments, and all your investments do is do whatever Pelosi does.
Wow.
And it's up like 32% on the year so far.
Of course it is.
She
Of
is
course
the
it is.
greatest like Warren Buffett ain't got shit on her. She is the greatest investor, but also just to quell liberals. Uh, what's his name? One-eyed Willie. What's his name?
Oh, um,
Uh, Dan. Isn't Dan? The Freedom Pirate. You know,
yeah,
with
yeah,
the
yeah. I'm
but
drawing a
like
blank.
he's yeah, but he's the same. He's doing the same thing.
Yeah,
He's obviously using inside information because his trading, like he got into Congress and suddenly became one of the best investors in the world.
amazing.
And I if you can't get much more obvious than that.
No, and it's not just a lot of people think too when I say this, they're like, well, this is the. I go, bro, it's not just Democrats, it's
Yeah,
everybody, bro. Like, because why wouldn't you? If it's not illegal, why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you? If you
yeah,
know a law is going to get passed to go against, XYZ company, why wouldn't you invest in it? And also, too, the fact that they even have that money from the get, like,
yeah,
oh boy, the fact that he can invest $1 million, Pelosi,
yeah,
the fact that they can invest it, you could say it's because your husband, this husband, fuck off, dude.
yeah.
How do you have that much money as
Yep.
a congressman, as a senator, even the president? I mean, I think they only make what do they make? Like $250,000 or something?
$172,000 a year.
Yeah, 107. So the fact that, you have these politicians how are you making it? The stocks. That's how. That's how they're making money. And the fact that it's not even illegal it's madness.
Well, technically, it's supposed to be illegal. That's the thing is like,
Sure.
but the proving that that hey, I invested, like that's why I look at this case with Michael McCall as you can't get much more blatant,
Right.
right? You can't get much more obvious of the fact. But here's how he's going to escape punishment on it because he didn't actually put in those investments until the TikTok proposal was public. So what he did was he wrote the bill and then he waited till it was announced and then invested the money
As
because
if
he
it
knew,
wasn't.
yeah, because it was public. Like it
Right.
was just a smart guy saying, "Hey, TikTok's probably going to get banned. I should invest in Meta." So he's going to escape it with that way. But the simple thing is that there were people in Congress telling him, "Hey, this is going to get passed." You know,
Which is crazy.
yeah,
And this bill I think is kind of the last straw to where this was the video I did that got a lot of hate where I'm like, listen, this is the last straw I think with
yep,
citizens because this bill was quite literally I think shitting on every single American for
Yep.
a billion reasons. No matter what side of the fence you're on, you have to kind of look at it and say, no matter who the president was, if it was Trump that made this decision, I'd be saying the same thing. I'm sure you will too. Where
Yep.
it's the fact that we're giving so much money to foreign aid,
Yep.
on top of that, sneaking in a bill to ban a social media app, the only app in recent years that you can actually speak your mind without getting completely canceled. And it just and it just so happens that those same congressmen and women that are passing this bill are also investing into their largest competitor.
yeah.
If we didn't have TV, social media, radio, podcast, internet, no one would care, no one would know. But it's like these politicians aren't aware that, bro, we know now. You fucked up big time.
But that's what's so worrying to me because if I didn't know better, I would say that Biden is trying to lose the election, right? Because he's picking a fight with every demographic you can. He's pissing off women with the changes to Title IX, right? He's pissing off large corporations with the capital gains proposal and the unrealized and any investor, especially day traders, because of unrealized gain taxes, right?
Well, even
He's pissed
homeowners, even a homeowner, you're fucking over.
homeowners too as well,
Yeah.
and then he's also pissing off Gen Z by pretty much banning their favorite platform, right? The platform they use to communicate. Like he might as well have tried to ban Snapchat while he was at it, right?
Right.
But the way I look at it is like here's what's so worrying to me. Nobody in their right mind, if they were actually worried about getting reelected, would do this in an election year.
No.
Like these changes, these are what you do when you're elected for your second term. You're in your second year of your second term. You can't be reelected. You don't give a shit what people think, and you
Yeah.
just want to do these things. But the fact that he's doing an election year worries me so much because it's like, okay, what does he know
That we don't. Yeah.
that he doesn't care about pissing off some of the largest demographics in the country?
And essentially putting in Trump. I mean, if you really think about it, You're
Yeah,
putting in your competitor
but that's
into
the biggest
office.
worry.
Yeah.
Does he already know he's going to win?
Yeah, and
Like,
if
is
not him, like who? Because we obviously know he's not. He can't even form a sentence. So who's
no, but
behind him?
my
Yeah.
worry is that the DNC has basically been like, you don't have to worry about the votes in this one.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Like
So
that's
it's
my
like it's already
worry
in the
because
bag.
nobody in their right mind would do this in an election year. I
Yeah.
mean, the things he's done in 2024 are absolutely would be just you're
It's suicide.
sacrificing your chances.
Yeah, it's election suicide for sure. Yeah.
But apparently to him it's not, which is wild to me.
Well, and you factor in everything that is going on with Trump in the trial. It's almost like, so are they for sure like gonna do whatever they can to keep him out of office? So it's gonna be like a forfeit, like it wouldn't matter. And
Well,
then
here
he
was my
wins.
biggest thing of why I wanted Vivek over Trump. Like you've seen
Yeah.
Avengers, right? Avengers: Age of Ultron,
Yeah.
right? Great movie, love it. But James Spader has a real as Ultron has a really amazing line. I mean, no, I'm sorry. The guy playing Vision has a great line in the movie where he
Right.
says, "Every year of the Avengers' existence, our enemies have gotten exponentially stronger." Right? The opposition we have invited opposition. Basically, our show of strength has caused the other side to do whatever they have to do to win.
Sure.
He's
Yeah.
like, we invite challenge, and I think that's what
Mm.
Trump does. Trump gives the Democrat Party authority to do whatever they want to in order to win.
Mm. That's
Whereas
it.
Vivek, what are you going to do? You're going to call the Indian guy racist?
Right.
You're going to call the Buddhist guy a Christian national? Like
Yeah.
you don't have that ammo with
Yeah.
Vivek. He could go in there and be like, I'm a minority
Right.
Hindu, uh, you know, economic middle of the road. Like you'd have no ammo on him.
Yeah. Well, and that was even more interesting. I mean, I obviously know why Trump was the front runner, but at
Oh
the
yeah.
same time, again, I think here's what's so funny about politics is if you line up 300 something million Americans and you figure out who are the Republicans, not the hardcore like, Republicans, but just like Republicans, people that vote
Yeah.
Trump and you line them up, I think they would have picked Vivek
Yeah.
over Trump.
I agree.
Except I think when they're at the booth and they're like, it's like the RFK thing, like you said. It's
Yeah.
like, I think Trump's going to win, so I'm not going to vote for RFK. Like
Yeah.
you almost like you're kind of in this like weird thing. The same thing with DeSantis. I think he would have had a chance too. He needs to run in 4 more years. I think he needs another 4 years on the
I
trail.
disagree with that completely.
Really? Talk to me.
I
Okay.
disagree. Like, look, he's the best governor in the country.
Yeah.
He ran one of the worst presidential campaigns I've ever seen
That's
in
right.
my life. Like
Yeah,
his
there was.
launch, like he had Elon Musk on his side at his launch and he completely butchered it.
Yeah.
Like I don't think,
He went too all in. He went too Trump.
yeah, he's the guy that like is extreme. Like I'm trying to think of it. Like if you have a TV, like this doesn't really apply now, but back in probably our younger years, if you had a local TV host that everybody loved,
Yeah.
and you were like, this guy should be on the national media, right? And then he gets on the national media and he just fucks it up completely.
Bombs it. Yeah.
And everybody's like, no, go back to your town
Right.
and go back to doing local shit. And that's where DeSantis can go down in history as the greatest governor in Florida. He will be governor of Florida as long as he wants to.
Yeah.
I think he needs to stay the hell out of the presidential races.
Yeah, he definitely went too far in. Like if he took down his DeSantis a little bit on his campaign, I think he would have been good. Because Vivek, I mean, I think handled it perfectly. Like I said, I would have voted for him as well. But it's also one of those things where if I'm the DOP and I look at it, I'm like, everything that they knew that was going to happen with Trump, like why wouldn't they go with Vivek? Logically, I'm like, I know why. But then I'm also like, I don't know if anybody, I can't see a liberal voting for Biden. Like if you're a Democrat right now, right? Like
They have to, though.
in public, I think you got to admit it. But when they're in the booth, there's no way rationally that you think this is a good decision. I can't
Well,
imagine.
it's not about for them. It's not about being a good decision. See, the only way a liberal doesn't vote for Biden is if they stay home.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Because they've just been conditioned to believe that Trump does not believe in any liberal values,
Right.
even though Trump at his core really is an old school liberal.
Right.
Like he's like I would bet that Trump and Bill Maher would agree on almost everything.
Oh yeah.
Right? If they actually said if Trump wasn't running for office and he was just Donald Trump running his empire, if they
Yeah.
had sat down together, I bet you they'd agree on almost everything.
For sure.
I mean, maybe not the drugs because Trump has never done drugs. He's very opposed to drugs.
Yeah.
But again, Bill would just be like, "Fine, I'm going to do my drugs in California."
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but like,
Well,
I would-
especially the new Bill Maher. I like the new Bill Maher better than.
well, that's the thing is though, Bill Maher hasn't changed.
Right.
Bill Maher has always been like I look at him the same way I look at who's the chick from Young Turks, Anna Kasparian.
Oh sure.
Like
Yeah.
she hasn't changed. The
Right.
difference is the rest of the Young Turks went sprinting to the left.
Yeah.
And
That's right.
she just stayed as a liberal. And she's like,
Yeah.
I don't identify with you guys anymore. But she's
Recently,
too
too.
embarrassed to identify with the right.
Right, exactly. And again, that's just one of those things that we have a misconception on as citizens, where far left, far right, you hear it all the time, right, left, all this stuff. Yeah, again, I think a lot of people just live in the middle and they sit in the middle, but they don't like to admit it because whatever, for specific values. Like I'm with you. I mean, Second Amendment, First Amendment, like freedom of press, freedom of speech, all that stuff.
Yeah.
But then also I look at it like, and everyone that asked me, if I'm a Republican, I'm like, yeah, of course. But, I vote Republican, sometimes I vote Democrat. But I also think, there might be wiggle room with a lot of different things. And I think it's worth exploring. I think you need to go into politics as a whole, A, do your research, but B, you have to question everything.
Yeah.
Because eventually some of the smartest people on the planet thought the earth was flat. Then there was a group. Then there was a group of people that said, "You know what? The stars, this were rotating like constellations. Maybe we should reevaluate." And then eventually we figured out it was round. And then now we know.
But now we've gone back to people believing the fucking Earth is flat.
Right, exactly. It's because those other fuckers just didn't listen, right?
Yeah.
So, but and again, if you want to think it's flat, I think that's exciting too. I think you should explore that. You should think about it because, unless you're actually above it and see to believe, I get it. It's all good. Yeah. It's like I talk to, obviously we're in Florida, but I'm actually closer to Tampa. So I have a lot of buddies that live in Clearwater. And over the years, I've had conversations with Scientologists. Mm-hmm. And those motherfuckers.
I live in Clearwater, so.
Oh, you live in Clearwater now?
Yeah.
Oh, this is fantastic. I love it. So like I look at, those people that I talk to, I talk to them like they're humans. I mean, they are humans, but like a lot of people, like when they hear that, they're like, oh, that can't be true. No. And I'm like, you mean it's more crazy than someone rising from the ashes and saving us all? Like what? Like it's all a little out there, but that's okay. Nothing wrong with it. So like when you talk to these people, you got to listen to them, and they honestly believe that that's happening. Kind of like the flat earthers, where until they're above space and they see Earth for what it is, you can't really convince them.
Look, here's how I look at flat earthers. I look at them just like I look at Taylor Swift fans, right? There is just as much evidence that Taylor Swift is a good music artist as there is that the earth is flat, right? So if you're willing to believe that she's good at music, you know what? Then you're willing to believe the earth is flat because there's no evidence to say that she makes good music. There's no evidence to say anything she makes is worth a damn, but people still love it.
People love it. By the millions, they come pouring in. Ugh. So you're not a Swiftie. All right.
No, and just for any Swifties that watch this, let me just say that I don't have any problem with Taylor Swift as a person. She seems like an unbelievably sweet human being.
Yeah.
Her music just sucks, but
Yeah. To each their own. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a new father to a daughter, so I know eventually I'm going to have to deal with these. I already deal with it with my wife occasionally, but yeah, it's rough. So going kind of back to the TikTok ban, because I know we touched base on that a little bit, and I know you spend a lot of time on TikTok. So obviously it's been ever since it came out, which a lot of people don't know, it was around well before COVID. It was musically before that. And it's been essentially the same thing, but during COVID, it obviously popped because everyone's stuck at home. What else are you going to do? You're going to do dancing and trends. And so for you, when this bill came to pass, and obviously I want to, if you're familiar with it, I want to get into the legalities of it because I think it's fascinating how it's not really going to get deleted from your phone. That's not how this is going to work.
No.
I don't think TikTok is going to go down swinging, and it's going to be lawsuit, and it's going to be an issue.
Oh, it's going to be years before
Yeah.
this gets resolved.
So, and I think that's fascinating. I think people need to know about that. But also, too, like, what's your thoughts on? We know why it was kind of snuck in because it wouldn't probably pass without this bill.
Yeah.
But then the idea of this bill. So I think with the $92 billion or whatever it was in this last bill combined since Ukraine, I think we're close to, like, are we over $1 trillion at this point?
To Ukraine?
Overall, like Israel and Ukraine, if you combine those, we're over $1 trillion, right?
I don't
mean,
think we're over $1 trillion yet, but I mean, we have, as far as monetary and military support, I think we're somewhere in the high, 400 billion range. Because
So we're halfway there.
But you have to understand is that the vast majority of that, I think out of all that money, 60 billion has been actual cash that went to Ukraine.
Oh,
Right?
that's all.
Actual money into their economy.
Yeah.
The rest of it is even seedier because that's the funny thing. People love to argue. They're like, "Oh, we're not giving that money to Ukraine." It's like, no, we're doing something worse with it. What we're doing is because our industrial industry in our country has become so addicted to war since we waged 20 years of it, and all these companies, Lockheed Martin, Boeing, all these companies grew to support that war effort.
Yeah.
Now we're feeding these companies through other people's war. Like that's really all we're doing. We're not supporting Ukraine because we support Ukraine. We're supporting Ukraine because these congressmen owe favors to Lockheed Martin and L3 and all these companies where they're like, you owe us hundreds of billions of dollars in war money.
Yeah.
So this is how we're funneling it. What we're doing is there's a reason why in Israel we're paying money to both sides.
Yeah. It's laundering.
Right?
We're laundering money.
And also the best part is if you look at it, I mean, the worst part really is what we spent on this war is nothing compared to what we're going to spend rebuilding Ukraine.
Oh yeah, I didn't think about that because we're going to have to
hundreds of billions of dollars to I forget which I think JP Morgan is the main financial backer of the rebuild of Ukraine. They got the contract to do that. So we're going to be JP Morgan is going to, like, all these contractors are getting paid right now because the war is going on. And as soon as the war is over, the money's going to start getting funneled to JP Morgan. Like that's the scary part is what we spend in the war is nothing compared to what we're going to spend after.
Yeah, and there's nothing there's nothing we like to do than to eradicate a country and rebuild it just like we want.
No, but that's the main reason. Because if you look at it, Ukraine and Russia early on in the war were sitting down for peace talks to talk about giving this certain section of Ukraine to Russia, which it's mostly Russian speaking anyway. It's mostly people that want to be part of Russia.
It was originally Soviet Union, right? Wasn't it?
Yeah. Well, it was all the Soviet Union at one point,
but
that one part of Ukraine is pretty much they want to be Russian, right? They want to be part of Russia. And the reason why we didn't allow that to happen was because that would have screwed up all our plans. It wasn't that we didn't want Ukraine to give up land, because really, why would we give a shit that Ukraine gives up land? Right. We didn't want them to do it because, one, our government, our military contractors wouldn't have got paid anything, and two, there would have been nothing to rebuild. Like, we need countries to get fucked up, because that's where we funnel all our money to all our banks to say, hey, we got to rebuild this, and then those banks in turn give money to the contractors who pay to rebuild everything and overpay like crazy to do it.
Yeah.
So it's just an industrial process. Basically, we were invested in the destruction of Ukraine, just like we were invested in the destruction of Gaza. Yeah. And look, I fully support Israel 100%, but America is going to make shitloads of money on the rebuild of Gaza.
Yeah. Yeah, and the scary part about all this is during this process and everything that we're doing, money, like most things, has shielded the eyes of the U.S. government, for better or worse, but they're not thinking about, okay, we're doing all this and Putin is a stable human being. That's what, obviously they don't think that, but in a perfect world, all this would go down and he wouldn't go down fighting. Point in fact, he is going down fighting, and who knows what he's capable of. You know, maybe in a year, maybe in 2 years, maybe he'll flip a switch and have dementia and frickin' press a button that we don't want him to press. And this all happened because we wanted to make money. That's just what it comes down to. And unfortunately, we've always done this, right? Like after 9/11, it's this pattern that we're in where not only do we need to create this to make more money, but we're putting all of our citizens on the back end and the tail end of things.
Right.
And it's so fascinating to me because I think if I was a politician, if I was the president, not that I would ever want to because it's the stupidest job in the world, but if I was to be in that role, I'd be like, all right, listen, if we're going to fuck over the American people, let's do 92 billion to Ukraine. Let's do 5 billion to California. Okay. Let's do 2 billion to Chicago. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's do 5 billion to New York. Like, let's at least spread it out a little bit so we're not so fucking fucked up. But instead, they do this. They pass this bill that not only gives more money to foreign aid, but you and I and every human being in the country is struggling. And now is just it's the worst time to do it, and it just doesn't make any sense to me. Like, why would you?
But so here's how it makes sense. So
Yeah.
you're trying to look at it from a thought process of why are our politicians taking actions that don't benefit Americans, right? And that right because in your head you're thinking that's their job. Their job is to take action that benefits Americans and take care of America. But here's the thing: if you switch your thought process and you say, okay, is the decision that politicians are making good for them? And if you look at it from that thought process, everything they've done makes total sense.
Yeah.
Because that's how I started looking at it. I stopped saying, because you can look at it and go, man, these things they're doing don't benefit Americans. Why are they doing this? Why are they doing this? Right? But if you just go, hold on, does this decision benefit them at the expense of the American people? It does. And you could do that for every action the Biden administration has taken. You could say, does this decision benefit Americans? No. Does it benefit the politicians at the expense of Americans? Yes.
Yeah.
So that's their thought process. They're making decisions that benefit them, not the American people. And if you look at it from that angle, everything they're doing makes sense.
Yeah, no, that's true. I mean, it's definitely logical. I mean, especially you could do that with anything, right? Like you could do it with big pharma.
Yep.
You could do it with the FDA. I mean,
Like you said with the COVID vaccine, did
vaccine,
mandating the COVID vaccine, did that if you were looking at did that really benefit the American people? No. But did it benefit politicians who have financial connections to big pharma?
yeah, big time.
So, and that's what I said. You can you could easily. It makes sense on everything if you just look at it. Does the decision benefit them?
Yeah, I guess to me it's like I get it, but I also would. The only reason
You
I
still
think
have
that
some faith in the politicians, don't you? You
Fuck
still
no,
holding
no.
out some hope. You're like a hopeful person that has some faith that our government cares.
No, I just think like, you know, if I've lied before, I continue to lie. I'm a good liar. You know, when my wife was pregnant, I told her she looked great in those jeans. Like, you know, sometimes you have to lie, right? But what's funny is my point I think is I don't have faith in these fuckers. My point is my wife knew I was lying.
Yeah.
You dig?
Yeah.
And I still chose to do it. So
But there was a benefit in your lie.
correct. And hers.
Yeah. Yes.
And hers, she felt good. And that's my thing with politicians is like, if you're going to lie to me, if you're going to really give it to me raw, at least give me something on the back end, benefit me some way. So I don't go on these TikTok sprees of doing, but they don't even care. It's like every person above, which is true, every person there is making decisions above 65. So they probably don't even understand the power of TikTok and what it's been able to do. Like, I think they have a grasp of it, which is why they wanted to get banned. But I don't think they understand what has happened.
Yeah, but here's how stupid the politicians are, right? So, like, you're on TikTok, you know Jeff Jackson.
Sure.
Right? He's the TikTok politician, right? The TikTok ban, the first time it was voted on the House, passed by an overwhelming margin, right?
Right.
If you're the Democrat Party and you're not absolutely stupid,
Right.
you tell Jeff Jackson vote no. Right? You just tell him vote no because it's not going to affect the overall vote.
Right.
Right? You won by more than 150 votes. You were fine.
Yeah.
Jeff Jackson, you tell him, say, hey, buddy, vote no so that you still have credibility.
Right.
Because he could have came back to TikTok and said, I voted no. I think this platform is important, da, 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 da. And he could have said that.
Yeah.
But he didn't. He voted yes. And it was like, how fucking stupid are you that you voted yes on a bill that didn't need your vote and you destroyed all your credibility? Like, that's where I look at our government and I go, how is a government that is fully populated by politicians, lawyers, and spies this bad at lying?
Exactly. Yeah.
Like, how are you this bad?
Or
Like,
or worse so, naive.
yes.
Naive into thinking that we're not going to like do the research. Like again, Pelosi and going back to the stocks, like it's all public knowledge. The
Yeah.
fact that you wouldn't, and that is also, like you said earlier, that's a little bit more sinister. It's a little more squirrely because it's almost like I don't think they are naive. I think they make these decisions and they do these things because they're like, hey, U.S. citizen, what the fuck are you going to do? You're not going to do anything,
It's exactly what it is.
which is terrifying because then I'm like,
Pelosi's
okay,
worth, what, a few $100 million, right? She doesn't need to invest. She's going to die soon,
right.
right? And her husband, if he doesn't have another gay lover over beating him up, he'll die soon as well, right? But they don't need
Yeah.
this money.
Yeah.
Like, you don't need. So you are doing, like, you don't need this money. You know the American people are watching. You know we can see it. So they are just like, hey, fuck you. We're going to do it anyway, which is insane to me.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's almost like, I got a buddy of mine that is from Italy that is now living here in America. And of course, their perception, you talk to a European and they're like,
Oh,
America's it's the greatest place in the world, right? And there's a lot of truth to that because there's people that don't even have clean water in the world. So, we definitely have it better. But what's interesting when you put everything on paper, because I was talking to them about this and I'm like, Italy, of course, there's a lot of issues with Italy, right? But at least going back to they're good at lying and they're a corrupt organization and everyone knows it, them included. And they don't fake to be anything. Like that's what they are. They're a corrupt organization. They're the mafia still, right? And at least with us, we're like the mafia pretending not to be the mafia, but then also like taking our money and pretending to be, it's like, it's one of those things where let's go all in and, let's make this country the mafia because it would make more sense. Like if you're really going to fuck us over, at least own up to it like Putin does. God love the man. I mean, at least we know he's a dictator. He knows it.
But here's what I want to ask you. So you understand the liberal thought process, right? So
Yeah.
I asked liberals this question before on the TikTok, and none of them had a good answer.
Okay.
I said, okay, so take out the fact that Putin invaded Ukraine and people have to pretend to give a shit about Ukraine. Like nobody does. Nobody actually cares. But
Right.
like let's take that out of it.
Yeah.
Throughout my entire life, I've watched people talk about how awful Putin is. Right? He's evil. Right? Russia, evil. Right?
Rocky
and
IV,
I asked him the
evil.
question. Well, and then I asked him the question. I said, why? Like why? Like I've asked liberals. I said, why do you hate Putin? Like, what do you hate about him? Do you hate that he wants to have socialism? Because y'all are fighting for that. Do you hate that he prosecutes and imprisons his political opponents? Because you're happy Biden's doing that. Are you, like all these different things? I'm like, he is doing everything you wanted.
Yeah.
So why do you hate him? Like, if anybody should hate Putin, it should be conservatives. Like,
Right.
liberals should be like, fucking Vladimir's our boy. You know?
Dude, and that's a great point. I have this conversation a lot too, where he's doing more. Again, if Putin was running for office in the country, he would be a Democrat.
Oh
Like,
yeah, obviously.
He does more from that side. So when I look at Putin, I look at it like I'm very aware that our country has shoved propaganda down our face our entire life, and it's so obvious at this point. And then you look at this guy, and he could have went to war with us numerous times. And in fact, he could do it any day if he wanted to, but that's not what he wants. And we've been trained to believe that is what he wants, which is their reasoning for justifying some of their actions.
Yeah.
And we do this a lot, don't we, in America, where we need a villain because the villain, if the villain's overseas, then the villain's not Biden.
Yeah.
Right? Like, so don't worry, America. Biden, he's bad, but at least he's not Russia. At least he's
Russia
not
did Biden
China.
favor. Russia did Biden a favor by invading Ukraine.
Oh, big time.
Because like if we didn't have that war to focus on for the last 2.5 out of these 3 years,
Yeah.
we might have focused on our president and the fact that he can't complete a fucking sentence. And it's like, and that's the thing that cracks me up because now I watch liberal creators do videos and they're like, Trump was stumbling all over his words. It's like, here's the thing. If you want to talk shit to Trump about stuff, totally with you. There's tons of ammo, tons of things you can talk shit to Trump about. But you cannot have a dude who very likely during his presidency has shit his own pants. And then talk about the other guy being infirm.
Yeah, dude. Come on.
Like you just can't. Like you could attack Trump on tons of stuff, but bro,
Yeah.
like stairs
Yeah,
are a
dude.
greater enemy to Biden than Putin. Like
It's so true. And again, that is the problem that I see with this two-party system, how it's gotten so far left, to your point earlier, where it's not like, liberals themselves have changed. A lot of them have, but I think the ones that use critical thinking and kind of understand, the thought process of what we need as a country. Because I think that changes from year over year, right? Like that's why I voted for Obama. And then I voted for Trump. My as I got older, different things became important: immigration, right, Second Amendment, freedom of speech, like all these things. Especially as a father of a daughter, like I think more about that stuff critically now versus impulsively, like I did in my 20s, right?
Yeah.
So, but I don't think a lot of people are there yet, and I think it's going to take something unfortunate, something dramatic that's going to get people to kind of look at things a little bit differently. And I think it's kind of starting, right? Like this TikTok ban, this Ukraine thing, and the Israel thing. I think it's starting to shift a little bit. But the only thing that I haven't seen changed is liberals, because when you do speak to a lot of them, their only thing, like even just today, someone commented on a dude that I think I said something like more centrist style, like I was breaking down abortion and immigration, different things like that. And then one dude was like, "Oh yeah, I 100% agree, Trump 2024." And then another person commented and said, "Of course you would vote for him, you piece of shit." And I go look on their page, and of course they're hardcore liberal, right? But then
Oh,
I
yeah.
look at that and I go, that's the difference, bro. Like this is why you can't have conversations with people, is because,
Yep.
like you said, Trump has made a ton of errors, like we all have.
Oh,
Chill
yeah.
the
Hell
fuck
yeah.
out. But the fact that you can't say, like I was messing around with my buddy that we have a good time on Facebook in particular, because that's where a lot of arguments happen politically. But I was having a conversation with him, and I go, this is the thing I don't like about Trump, blah, 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 but I'm going to vote for him. I go, are you voting for Biden? He goes, yeah, of course. I go, list one thing in 4 years that you don't like about him.
Yeah.
He didn't list a thing.
Well, no, they can't.
I go,
They
that's a
can't,
problem.
because
I go, that's a
'cause
problem.
They can't admit mistakes.
That's crazy.
But that's where Trump has benefited from the media.
Big time.
Trump hasn't even had to admit his mistakes because the media won't let him forget about them.
Right.
Right? So Trump has basically had to admit his mistakes because the media is going to hound him about any of them. Right? So it's like I would rather have a president that the media is dedicated to attacking
Yeah.
than one the media is dedicated to letting get away with everything. And then you look at like places like NPR, like the CEO of CEO of NPR did that interview recently where she said her biggest hurdle
Yep.
to success is the First Amendment, and it was like, wait, the freedom of the press is in that one, right? Like that's not a different amendment, right?
Right.
Like your freedom of the press is included in there. Like you wouldn't exist. But then I looked at it and I was like, wait, NPR is a mostly government-sponsored broadcast.
Yep.
So NPR without the First Amendment would be the only news agency that existed. So I was like, and again, I went back to the thought process of, did that statement benefit you or did it benefit America? And it was like, no, it benefited you. So of course it makes sense.
Yep. Yeah, that definitely slipped out. She was not supposed to say that.
No, well, she gave a TED talk talking about the same thing.
Oh,
Where
really?
she was like, oh yeah, she gave a whole TED talk talking about how people's freedom to be able to express their thoughts without filters is a problem for America.
That's crazy. It's madness.
Yeah, and she received an applause.
Of
Like,
course,
that's how it started.
they paid everyone to be in that audience, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's one thing I think the Republican Party does a very bad job of. Like,
Yeah.
me and Ant talked about this before, and we're like, how is there not Republican PACs dedicated to sponsoring content creators to make content?
Oh, for sure.
And the thing is, you wouldn't even have to stay ethical. You wouldn't have to do like the DNC does with Harry Sisson and V from Under the Desk News and all that. What you do is you say, we're not going to pay you, but what we're going to do is we're going to pay for your travel and your admittance to this Republican National Committee event,
Sure.
so that you are there and you can give free responses on what you see.
Yeah.
Right? You
Yeah,
do things like that.
Yeah, they should treat it more like user generated content type of stuff where,
Yeah.
yeah, it's more because, again, people dig that even more. And I think more people would appreciate and go to that versus
Yep.
like what we're seeing with mass media, right? Where it's like,
Yeah. Just, but because on social media, our currency is authenticity.
that's right.
Because like once you lose the authenticity vibe,
Yeah.
you're like that's why my following has increased exponentially,
Yeah.
and it always like I'm on my 27th account. In the last, I started this account 9 months ago,
Wow.
and I'm going to hit 1 million probably before the end of the month.
Yeah.
Right,
But it's
and the only
authenticity.
reason that happened is because I will make fun of both sides. There's not a single video I have that is a paid partnership.
It's awesome.
I don't take money from anyone. I don't take sponsorships from anyone. I make my content what I want to say. So it's authentic.
That's how it should be. I mean, and
Yeah.
again, I think we're in a very interesting and fun time to where, as a creator, you have this rare opportunity to do that, and kind of separate ourselves a little bit from
Yeah.
media, right? Because it is corrupt. You can't be saying, "Hey, everyone should get vaccinated," and then also a commercial break from Pfizer. Like that's probably
Don't get
that's
me wrong. Don't get me wrong. I'll happily take some Pfizer money. Don't get me wrong.
shit. I think we all
They
need
haven't,
it.
they haven't offered.
Fucking
But
hell.
again, I would. The reason why they won't is because it's like I don't believe in your product.
That's right.
Now,
You got to
don't get
believe
me
it
wrong. Pfizer and Merck and all them, they have made products that have made people's lives better.
for sure.
They have
Yeah.
saved lives with their products.
Yeah.
You just like you're not gonna, even the best batter in the world, hitting 300. Like that's what you can expect.
That's right. Well, hold on.
Sounds good.
So let me get this straight. So we'll go back. So we talked about a lot. So first off, thanks for the time. It's always interesting to see because you don't hear it a lot. And I think it's more important this medium as a whole, like just talking about these type of issues. And that's why I always try. And I love how you respond to comments as well. I know Ant's really good at it. And I think some of the best creators need to do this a lot more, which I see a lot of people saying, don't read the comments. And there's a little bit of truth to that too, because it could really,
Yeah.
if you don't have the critical thinking skills, the self-esteem, I mean, it could be very damaging, and I can appreciate that. But also there's a level of, like we said earlier, authenticity. And I think there needs to be a little bit more comfortability with having these tough conversations. Because if not, then we do get stuck in the whole propaganda thing where it's like we're believing one side saying that, Russia is bad and Putin is a dictator and he is trouble. But then when you start doing the research and you have more conversations and long form conversations, by the way, these short, unedited commercial break type of bullshit conversations, that just makes no sense because
Exactly.
you can't get anything done that way. So I appreciate your content and how you do things. So walk me through real quick because I don't want to take too much of your time, but kind of walk me through like your thought process when you do put out content, what you want to talk about, how you even started. Have you always been kind of political when it comes to these things, or?
No. So I wasn't political. So, I'll be honest, when I first started my first account on TikTok, I got to, I think 1.2 million followers in 9 months. It was huge. And it had nothing to do with politics. Absolutely nothing whatsoever. My original content was helping women better understand how men think, basically helping them. And it blew up. It was really, really good. And then we got closer to the election and I started to throw my opinion a little bit into politics. And that led me to getting into all kinds of trouble. And honestly, I started doing political accounts out of spite because I was like, I only said a little bit of political stuff and they banned me. I lost my massive account. And then I was like, all right, then if this is what makes you angry, I'm going to do this. But I'm always going to stay busy in my comment section because I look at any creator who avoids their comment section as it's equivalent to open. You got a bunch of people in a room. You open the door to a room, stick your head in, yell something that pisses them off, and shut the door. Like there's no opportunity for growth. There's no opportunity for feedback. It's almost pointless that you did it in the first place, right? So what I want to do is I want to step in the room. I want to lock the door behind me, and I want to have the discussions. And then if you beat me, if you know more about something to me, great. But what I found, and this is probably supremely insulting to a lot of people, is most people are fucking stupid. Like they're smart about what they need to do in life, right? They're whether you're a machinist or a welder or an accountant, you're really smart about those things. But generally, people are fucking stupid. Like I think if we look back into ancient times and we look to today, there's probably the same percentage of super intelligent people. and they're just dragging the rest of us along with them. Like
Yeah.
I always tell people, it's like, if you think you're smart, go back. If I were to send you 200 years back in time, or say 500 years, 1,000 years back in time, how would you impress them? And it's like, do you know anything that would impress those people? Or do you just go, hey, there's this thing called lighters. Okay, how does it work? I don't know. There's these things called satellites. How do they work? I don't know. Like if you would go back 1,000 years and you would be just as stupid as everyone else there, you would just know about stuff, but you wouldn't know how to actually do it. Then you're not smart. You're just living in an advanced time. You're not actually smart.
Yeah, you're good at regurgitating information as opposed to That's a very fascinating way of looking at it. And I think for some reason Elon gets a lot of hate. I personally admire everything that he's been able to do.
Mm-hmm.
But what I love most about him, I think, is that he knows things. Like, he's smart.
Yeah.
He, whether you believe in his decision making or not, or how he acts, it's you could say the same thing with Trump, right? The guy knows business.
No.
He just knows business.
Yep.
So if you talk to him about, XYZ, he might not know as much, but he's not going to be the type of guy that's going to lie to you. He's going to regurgitate something that he knows from his experience, and it's going to eventually lead to a solution. He might get there in a different way than you, but at least he knows about those topics. And I think that's what terrifies people a little bit, because it is different than what they're used to, right? Like, I'm used to, hey, Tony, what do you know about? Okay, Google. Like, you're not smart if you Google things, right? But these guys that kind of do say what's on their mind, and they're a little bit more intelligent with certain things, that is terrifying to some people. And that's when I think you have to either A, do more research, or B, be submissive to these people. You can't talk down to them when you're not as smart as them. You know, and I think that's the problem, is a lot of people, they're just, maybe their egos hurt a little bit, so that's why they lash out and talk.
Well, that's the thing, is people are surprised about some of the topics that I talk about. They're like, how do you know about this stuff? It's because I research it.
Right.
Like, to me, like, that would be the common. Like, I would expect that people would think, oh, how did you do this video about the universe possibly being infinite? I read 12 research papers on it of people of opposing views, and developed my own thought process on it.
Right.
It's like that. Like, how do you think I made that video?
Yeah.
Like that. Like, how would you make that video? Would you just go, universe is infinite, fuck it? Like, that's my point. Is like, the answer is always research. The answer is how do I know about this? Because I read deeply on it to make sure I understood it. Yeah. And I won't make a video on something I don't understand. Like, sometimes but I've made that mistake before. I've made a reactionary video where it's like, that's so wrong. And I've said something, and then I've gone back and looked at the video. And I'm like, oh, I was so wrong. Yeah. But I'll make a video after that going, look, I was way wrong. I'm sorry. I was, but that's the way it should be. It should be just, hey, if I'm going to make a video about something, you research it. But like you said, if I don't know about something, I don't know about it. Yeah. But that's where people like Elon and Trump are. That's where I view them as exceptionally smart, because when they don't know something, they surround themselves with people who do.
That's right. Yeah.
Like, it's when Elon, I'm sure Elon doesn't know how his rocket perfectly functions, but I'll bet you he brought on the best rocket engineer he could.
Yeah.
And that's the difference. The stupid man tries to build the rocket. Right. The smart man wants to build a rocket and finds the best person to build the rocket.
Yeah, I forget who it was. I want to say it was like either, what's that show? Adam Questions Everything.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about. He went on Joe Rogan.
Yeah, he got destroyed. No surprise there. Which he's, he has entertaining content, and I've heard some of his clips from his podcast. But he said something recently where he was bashing Elon Musk about PayPal. And have you seen this?
Yes.
And the end all be all that I'll take that stupid jabroni speech and I'll lower it down to about 30 seconds. And essentially he was saying that Elon isn't smart. He surrounds himself with the smart people. And I'm like, well, yeah, the guy owns fucking 12 companies. Of course he's not doing everything. But when you say that, you're really just kind of giving him the upper hand. You're saying, hey, dude, you are smart. You are intelligent. You can't bash somebody for surrounding themselves with a bunch of smart people. If you ask Elon exactly how the rocket works and he doesn't answer, he's not an idiot. He doesn't do that on a daily basis, so you can't really hate the guy for it. It's just so funny how, like, some people and their perception on these topics, it's fascinating.
But that's where when people say something like that, I always say, it's like, okay, so say Trump obviously probably doesn't have a great grasp of physics. Let's be real, right? Probably something that's never mattered to him.
Sure.
But is he stupid for hiring Neil deGrasse Tyson to explain physics to people? Like, is he stupid for bringing Brian Cox to talk about physics? Like, like
Yeah.
that's where you look at it and you go, okay, you could build a mountain out of the shit Biden doesn't know, right? But let's be real, you could build a mountain out of the shit everybody doesn't know,
Right.
any person.
Yeah.
The difference is, do I form my own opinions? Like, if all of the shit I don't know, do I form my opinion about something I don't know by just saying what I think, or do I form that opinion by getting the advice of the people who do know? Because that's the only way any of us have ever learned anything. Like,
Right.
most people aren't like. There was I forget who said it, but I was going to make a TikTok about this where he said, "Are you smart, or are you just really good at regurgitating shit smart people say?" Or are you really good at regurgitating shit smart people have written down? Because the vast majority of everything we know is just a regurgitation of shit smart people have written down.
That's right. Yeah.
And it's like there are very few people who their thoughts are coherent and cogent without the aid of somebody smarter than them having told them something.
Absolutely.
And those are the smart people.
Like, you brought up Neil, and I thought that was a great move too. But Neil deGrasse Tyson, if you were to take every physics book, let's say, and you were to burn every physics books, you could go up to Neil and say, "Yo, bro, can you help us get started?" And
Yes.
I trust that humanity would be okay with that. Yes. But there's a lot of people, me included, by the way, that if someone says, "Hey, dude, all the physics books are done," I'd look at you like,
I'd be like, "Oh, I guess we don't have physics anymore."
I was like, we got to figure out something else, because that whole gravity thing is a mystery to me.
Exactly.
Right. So, but yeah, you're right. We do need those people. And I think that's what's so great about TikTok in particular. Very similar to how I look at like podcasting, is like, you can have those conversations if you're intelligent about it, and you can learn a lot from it. Because I've learned more, if I'm being honest, about parenting through TikTok than I have reading books, which I have, and doing my own research and all that, because I think there's something beautiful and interesting about like talking to somebody, seeing someone's story. That's why I love podcasting, where I've learned so much on this podcast. I think you might be, by the time I edit this, like episode 245 or something.
Damn.
And yeah, dude, I've been doing it for a while, but like now I do it full time, but prior to it was just a side hustle. But I've learned so much doing this and having conversations, and literally my political beliefs, environmental beliefs. Like, I could list 1,000 things that I didn't believe in 4 years ago that now I'm very much in favor of through these conversations with people that are way smarter than me. And I think that's what we got to get back to somehow. And if it's not through podcasting, it has to be, like we mentioned earlier, through TikTok. But having conversations back and forth, doing the research, listening to fellow creators. And I love what you said earlier about when you do research, you look at both sides.
Yeah.
I do that same thing too. Before TikTok was invented, I watched CNN and Fox. A lot of people don't do that. A lot of people just watch one or the other. And that's just not a good way, because going back to the the TikTok ban, I think it's so funny how they say they want to ban TikTok because they're afraid of misinformation about China giving us the wrong thing. Meanwhile, if you watch CNN only, they're giving you the wrong thing. And then Fox is giving you the wrong thing. Yep. So it's like, the cool thing, at least with TikTok, is it only takes a couple of videos to switch up your algorithm. Have you noticed this?
Oh yeah. Well, that's one of the worst parts of getting banned, is you come back and your algorithm doesn't know you.
Right. Yeah.
And it is a TikTok sucks when the algorithm doesn't know you.
Yeah, it's a shit. But it only takes like 10, 15, 20 videos to do it. I went down this route.
You make the same mistake when you watch those like split screen videos where they're playing somebody else's video and it's split screen.
Yes.
If you just watch 2 or 3 of those, your For You page is covered.
That's all that. But that's what I think is so beautiful about that algorithm, is I've noticed that versus like a Meta, where you're getting whatever it is. Let's say, you're Democrat. Now you're getting all that stuff on Meta constantly. But if you watch a couple Trump videos, it takes a long time for you to get more right-leaning stuff, which you could say is intentional or not. But
it's definitely intentional.
Right. But at least with TikTok, it's like, when I watched, I had this buddy that I was telling you about from Italy, and we do this series called Tenfold Episodes, which I think you'd appreciate, where he doesn't know anything about conspiracy theories. I'm like a huge tinfoil hat in some aspects. And
Wait, did Ant talk to you about his show, his conspiracy theory, like late night show?
he mentioned it, no, but I've seen him record some stuff.
Yes.
Okay, great. Because what I love about this that I'm starting to do is this guy, heavy Italian accent, shout out Amadeo, and he doesn't know, they don't understand what conspiracy theory is. So when I brought it up, he doesn't understand. So I give him a research project. So I say, okay, so this last one was the Pentagon has a budget in film and movies. A lot of people don't know that, but they're specifically dedicated. If there's anything like, Black Hawk Down, Zero Dark 30, the director and the studios have to confront the military, and the military walks them through and pays for them to follow a certain narrative. This is true for decades that the military has been involved. So I told him to look that up, and he went down this crazy rabbit hole that led to a bunch of things. And then I go, okay, the next episode, bro, we're going to talk about the ice wall. And he goes, what is this ice wall? And I go, just look it up. So he has to.
You gave him a big dose right off the jump.
Oh, dude, we're not fucking around. The next one's going to be flat Earth. We're going to go into UFOs, all this stuff. But I only tell him right before we record. So he looks this up beforehand, and then I get his reaction as we're talking through it. And the reason I bring that up is because it's interesting that when you go through your feed, especially on TikTok, and if you just look up a couple UFO things, now you're getting all that.
Oh, yeah.
And then if you switch back to politics after a couple of videos, you'll get all and zero UFO stuff. And I really appreciate that for TikTok, because at least you're getting what you're feeling in the moment. Because I think we're all changing constantly. We're all
like
interested in
my late night content on TikTok is my late night For You page is very different than my daytime For You page. My late night For You page, like TikTok knows that late night I want to see like either heartwarming shit, or I want to see like music, or I want to see like Reddit stories. But during the day, I don't see any of that.
What do you see during the day?
During the day, I get normally the thing that messes my algorithm up during the day is I get tagged in no less than 250 videos a day.
No shit.
Like, so I am constantly fed what people want to see me respond to. Like my DMs, I average somewhere around 1,200 to 1,500 DMs a day. My that's where I tell people, I'm like, look, if I don't respond to your comment, it's not intentional. The first 100 people to comment on my video, you're going to get a response. After that, it goes to 500, 700, 1,200 comments. It's like, I can't. I just don't have the time.
Yeah.
And I was like, but yeah, I mean, I get fed politics on a heavy dose during the day.
Yeah.
But I'm also, the only creators I'm looking up are political, because when something happens, there are certain creators I go to where I'm like, if it's say it's a race-based crime,
right,
I'm going to go look up Jeff Mead. Right? Say it's something to do with Israel, I'm going to go look up Proud Zionist or Joel Uziel or Hebrew Hammer or even on the other side, I'm going to look up. There's a few creators. There's like Muslim Cowboy, and there's what's it called? Uzia is the other guy. Like it all depends. So
you want to get the experts
in the beginning of that day. That's going to feed the rest of my day. That's why my videos for the day tend to have a theme. Like my videos today are all about economics, right? They're all about money and taxes and stuff like that. Because this morning I looked into something that somebody said, and now my feed is like, hey, here's economics for you.
Yeah. And do you find yourself a lot, like when you're talking about these topics, I mean, are these things that you obviously don't think about, right? It's just kind of response to you, but have you become passionate about these over the years just strictly because of TikTok, or you research? Do you find yourself?
If I'm going to be
more?
honest, it is remarkable about how little I give a shit in real life. It's funny because my fiance, she'll be on live with me a lot of the time, and they'll be like, why are you so passionate about these? And she will be like, he's not, because I look at TikTok as my outlet to say things to the masses to have an effect of facts.
Right.
In the real world, the people that I surround myself with we don't really have arguments, right? We
Right.
don't really disagree on big things, and we don't have deep like we're trying to enjoy our lives.
Sure.
So like
Yeah.
TikTok is my outlet to be an over exaggerated version of my argumentative self.
Yeah.
Whereas in real life, my fiance wins every argument.
Yeah. Right.
You know,
Yeah.
my buddies, I don't argue back with them. They say something, I'm like, you're wrong, but fuck it, who cares?
Yeah.
Right? Like
Exactly.
I'm very passive in my real life. I'm just
Yeah.
very assertive and very passionate about what I do when I'm online.
Yeah. Well, and that's great. I mean, that just goes to show, obviously, if you're passionate about anything, no matter what it is, I don't think it should consume your life. I realized that a long time ago to where, A, it's just not sustainable, right? You can't do it forever. But then B, it's also like the people that you surround yourself with, more often than not, you're like-minded. So
Yeah.
you should anyway, if you want to be sane, you should surround yourself by like-minded people. So that way you don't go absolutely batshit crazy. It's like if you're a hardcore liberal, hey, surround yourself with liberals. It's great. Because if you can't handle an argument with a Republican, then obviously you shouldn't have a lot of Republican friends.
Well,
But
you think like the argument online becomes that somebody like if somebody online says something that I disagree with, it turns into, well, you're stupid for thinking that way.
of course,
In person with a friend, somebody says something you disagree with, you say that's stupid.
yeah.
Right?
Well,
You because you like what's the old saying? Don't ever accept criticism from somebody you wouldn't accept advice from.
that's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's 100% true. And I would even say, I've done this before. I've had this challenge where when I would do controversial stuff, after a few comments and people don't respond how I feel they should in terms of like being cordial and appropriate and if you want to have a conversation, then they start getting, bashing me. And I'm like, listen, bro, why don't you just hop on my podcast and we'll shoot the shit for a little bit.
Yeah.
Can I tell you? There's only one person out of the hundreds that I've said that to. And now we're actually good friends. We disagree on a lot of stuff, but we're friends now. But he's the only one that agreed to come on my show is because more often than not, like you said, the people that are on the screen they're keyboard warriors. They're just those type of people that only like to say it via keyboard and not to your face. And that's a problem.
That happened in a wonderful debate I had about Israel and Palestine. I had a live where I was talking about Israel. I had the banner behind me said Israel is the only moral country in the Middle East. It was designed to incite a little bit.
Of course.
And everybody in the comments was like, bring this guy up, bring this guy up, bring this guy up. So I brought him up.
Yeah.
And they just kept saying, you're afraid. And I'm like, he hasn't requested. Like, as soon as he requests, I'll bring him up. So I brought him up. And me and him had what had to be a 2.5 hour long discussion, completely cordial, going back and forth on different points of like, well, the history says this. Well, I look at it this way. Okay. We had a 2.5 hour conversation. It got so bad that because we started to agree on a ton of stuff. We started to be like, well, I can see the middle ground in that. We can agree on this. That when we started agreeing on everything, the people that had said to bring him up mass reported him to get him taken down because they saw him agreeing with me.
Wow.
So after our 2.5 hour completely cordial conversation, we both got taken down for hate speech and harassment. And he messaged me and was like, bro, what I was like, I can tell you that was not my people reporting you. And I was like, we were having a great conversation. And he was like, yeah, he goes, that's insane. He said, we were getting along. And I was like, that's the problem. That's not what people wanted. They wanted you to come up and destroy me. And because that didn't happen, they reported you.
It's so weird too, man. Like, and not only are people acting like that way, but I mean, you see everything that's going on in the universities, right? And it's kind of crazy. And I get why people are so passionate about that, right? Because when it's no different than people when they're protesting abortions. Like, I get it, dude. I understand that logic. And, without people protesting and doing certain things, we can't move the needle with a lot of stuff. I mean, women have the right to vote now because women protested. Like, there's so many great benefits that come from it. But it seems like now, especially with like people like, throwing paint on the Mona Lisa, thank God it's protected. And, you got all these people blocking bridges. And we've taken this thing so far gone. Yep. And we're not addressing the root issue, which is like it's not the human beings over the sea, right? Like we shouldn't be focusing on we should be focusing on the people that are making the decisions.
Yep.
That are going to, but our hatred and anger is to everyone in this country, and it's almost like when you watch some of this stuff go down, and we obviously know a lot of these people were planted. I mean, that's
Oh
been
yeah.
proven
Oh,
for
yeah.
sure.
Well, you see when they ask them questions and they go, "Well, I
Yeah.
don't really know what we're arguing about here." It's like, yeah, we
Yeah.
know.
Well, didn't some jabroni in Colombia was asked that, a reporter asked her, "Why are you here?" And she's like, "I don't know."
Well,
Oh
she was a
no,
Columbia student that had actually gone to NYU.
that's what it
She's
is.
a
Yeah.
student at Columbia, went to NYU, and they said, "What are you protesting?" She's like, "Well, we're, standing up for Palestine." They said, "Yeah, but what specifically are you protesting against
Right.
NYU?" And she goes, "I don't really know." She asked her friend, and her friend said the greatest line: "I wish I was more educated on this." And it was like, so do we.
I'm
Like,
so
because if
glad
you
that
were
was
more
filmed.
educated, you wouldn't have been at this protest. Like, and that's and the thing to me is like I support protest. I think here's the thing: if you hate Israel, protest. If
Yeah.
you support Hamas, you support Palestine, you support Gaza, protest, whatever. But that protest cannot be against the Jewish people. That
Right.
protest is against the actions of the Israeli government.
Yeah.
So if you
Exactly.
want to say Benjamin Netanyahu is a war criminal, I disagree with you, but you have
Right.
a right to protest that. But
Yeah.
what you don't have the right to do is intimidate the Jewish students on your campus.
Yeah. That's
That's the scary part when it turns into
yeah.
hating the guy that last week you were at a party with him and it was all
Right.
cool. But
Yeah.
now because he happens to be a religion that's the same religion over there, it's the same thing of people hating Muslims after 9/11.
Yeah.
Like
Oh my God.
my,
Yeah.
my friend Ahmed down the street that's been my friend for 10 years isn't suddenly a terrorist because some fuckface in the Middle East decided to attack us.
Yeah. I mean, it's
You
no
know?
different than, when COVID happened and they found out that the lab leak happened and now everyone hates Chinese people. It's like, well,
Yeah.
hold on.
It was
What are we doing here?
insane.
It makes no sense. And again, these are the same people, right, that are in support of a lot of decisions that go down. Like these left wing, these far left people that are making these decisions to protest aggressively towards the people, and they're not using these critical thinking skills and doing the research and knowing more about the topic. Because I think what separates the protesters now versus like the '60s is like these hippies would lie in front of a bus and would legitimately take their own life by getting run over because they believe in something so passionately,
Yeah.
and they believe in love and truth and the American way, and they would die for this country in particular, the U.S. But now you look at these protesters, and it's almost like when you watch it, you don't see one single person that's full of love and research and compassion for this specific topic. They're only doing this to get a rise, to get attention. It's
Well,
just,
that's because I think in the 60s and 70s, they protested based on ideals.
that's
Nowadays,
true.
they protest based on issues. And it's like, no, like the reason why the protests in the 60s and 70s were so powerful was because you couldn't argue. Like, you couldn't argue with the hippies. You couldn't be like, hey, we need to be war. And because they would just go, why?
Yeah.
Like it would be like, why are we doing this? Like and you had no valid answer for them.
Yeah.
Now when they protest, it's like we're protesting for this, and it's like, okay, but you're not educated about this. Yeah, but we were told to protest about this. It's
Right.
like, okay, then you're sheep at that point.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
the people who protested in the 60s and 70s, they really believed it.
Oh yeah.
Down to things like the Stonewall riots.
For
They
sure.
were protesting for their lives. And now people are protesting because it's trendy.
Yeah. And I think, especially on the left side in particular, it's almost idolized. It's almost encouraged. But by the way, you can't.
I wouldn't say almost. I would say it's
Right.
encouraged.
It's encouraged.
blatant.
Yeah. It's almost like the more you do it, right, the more attention you get, the more thing.
Yep.
And plus, you get to take off work, and you can come back and say, "Hey, I was doing this for this," and then what's work going to do? Fire you because of that? They can't do that, God forbid, because then you'd be against these protesters.
And you're
it's
like,
almost,
you obviously hate the First Amendment at that point.
right, of course, yeah. So it's almost like people have these certain individuals, which is a very small population, but it's enough to make it's noticeable. Like we see you, but it's almost like they're intentionally doing it, which I think they are. But
They are.
it's kind of terrifying because there's not enough people speaking up, and I think it's starting to come out to where again I look at this as a new father, where in 20 years every decision I'm making now I'm trying to, whether it's on my podcast or personally, of course, when I'm teaching her ethics, and I'm trying to do as best we can to raise this human. But unfortunately, if people don't get on the same page, she's either going to be the weirdo that has these certain beliefs, but these common sense beliefs. And we just need to stop this freight train because it's getting dangerous. It's getting so crazy.
Yeah, but it's not going to. Like
Yeah.
if you look at it
Yeah.
historically, any empire that has existed,
Yeah.
it goes down this path. Like
Right.
we have not diverted from the path of an empire at all. We
Yeah.
have established ourselves. We have become an economic power. We have waged war. We have waged war for the right reasons and the wrong reasons. And then
Mm.
we have massively overextended ourselves. We
Yeah.
have made promises that are impossible for us to keep, worldwide. Even back then, it was, area wide.
Sure.
And then what happens is you have a disaffected people that fall to be dependent upon the government.
Yeah.
The government initially is able to support that, and then it consolidates power. It
Hmm.
becomes a centrally controlled empire more than it becomes a government.
Right.
And then people, after a generation or two, revolt against that.
Yeah.
And that we've stayed on the tracks of every empire in history.
Yeah.
Like I had a history teacher when I was in high school that told me, he was like, there are more than 500 empires that have existed longer than the U.S. that don't even show up in your history book. He's
Wow,
like, so
that's
he goes,
crazy.
when you think America is amazing and will go down in history as one of the greatest countries ever, he's like, I want you to know that there are empires who have done more than America has done and have existed longer than America has done that don't even show up in this book.
Wow, that's wild. Yeah, I mean, that's such a great point you said with empires, because isn't the average empire, isn't like 250 years they last?
It's usually the longest empire is generally about 350 years. On the
Right.
short end, it's about 200.
Yeah, and
Yeah, we're right in that time.
We're
Like I
getting there.
said, if
Yeah.
you followed the path of any empire, whether it was Constantinople or the Byzantine Empire, the Ottoman Empire, pick an empire,
Right.
British Empire, any of them,
Yeah.
if you match up American events in history to their events in history, we are just
That's not,
following right on the line.
it's textbook
We're
for
going to
sure.
last a little longer because we based our government off of a Native American government rather than the Roman Empire, which is what a lot of European governments did.
Yeah.
We copied the Iroquois, but so we might last a little longer.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's yeah, man. It's one of those things where you kind of look at it and it's like you can't really stop it, but you also look at it like we do have it really good, and it is great
do.
to be an
do.
American, and it's great to be here. I think, luckily though, I think we're in a position where the world itself has kind of evolved into this new thing with the birth of AI and the technological advances and just everything that's going down. I think it's exciting because now, as an American, you can pack your bags, and go to maybe another country if you want. If you don't look at innovation or freedom or anything like that as a good example. Again, I bring back Europe and Italy and things like that because I've talked about it a lot. But like that's a great place to retire. And now Italy is in the position where they're like paying people to come to their country, and you could buy a house.
€1 gets you a house.
Yeah, man, you just got to do a little bit of renovation, and you're set up and you're good. And they wouldn't do that 50 years ago, right? So it's a very exciting time around the world, and I just think we have to kind of be a little bit more open-minded about saying, hey, this is the best country in the world, but it's you can control what you can control. And unfortunately, a lot of people that I talk to, they're like, oh, but America this, and I go, dude, it's not. Listen, it's a great place to live.
Well, that's what people don't realize is like from just the money I make off of views on TikTok, right? Just in the creativity program,
Yeah.
I could move to Romania and I would be in the top 10% of earners there.
That's right.
If all I did was make content,
Yeah.
like that's it. I didn't do anything else. I just made content, made the exact money I make now. I'd be in the top 10 of earners in Romania. And there are at least 2 times a year where I have an internal debate with myself of, do I just want to just go to an island, be a bartender, and smoke weed on the beach every day? Like, because I work in the corporate rat race,
Right.
and there's so many times where I just sit back and I go, man, I could just bounce and go clean boats for a living, and just not give a shit, like just not care. And every time I have that debate, it gets a little more attractive.
Yeah, man. I mean, I'm speaking from experience. I mean, I was in the corporate world for a couple decades, and more recently, I worked at Monster Energy for almost a decade, and I was in their marketing department. I learned a lot, and I had the privilege of being a part of like the social media space, and I learned a lot from content and everything. And now I'm off. I got my own company. I'm doing my own thing. I create content for a living. I get this podcast, and it is kind of one of those things where I do think about it a lot. Where I think this is a great place to raise a kid, but when she gets a certain age, we've definitely thought about leaving for one reason only. Let's say if everything turns around and gas prices are lower, economy is great, interest rates on houses are great, and everyone's getting paid what they deserve, and California and Chicago and all these places is just magically the country gets back to normal, right? I still think we're in a position where we're not going to get less materialistic in America. And I think that's one of the biggest problems that Americans have is, yes, it is rough. Yes, things are expensive. Inflation's real. Like all that stuff is true. But what's also true is you have the new iPhone.
Yes.
That's also true.
I'm talking to you on a brand new MacBook Air.
Go fuck yeah, dude. That's a great Air. I got one too. It's fantastic. So it's like we do like to spend money. So
we do.
The average human being, I think, average income's I think 32 and some change now. Household might be 75, I think. 75 a year doesn't get you a lot. It doesn't.
No.
But it's about $65,000 more a year than a lot of other people in the world. So we just have to take a step back and say companies are great at marketing. There's a lot of cool shit. If you don't buy as much of that shit, you'll have more money. You'll be a little bit more happier because you won't stress out living paycheck to paycheck. Now, does a lot of this fall on the government? Kind of, sure. But you have to, again, like we've talked about, you got to look at both sides. You got to say, it does, but what if they didn't exist? What if I was in another country that didn't have a government? What if I was in Russia? What if I was in Colombia where I'm scared for my life? If I only had $10 to my name, what would I spend that money on?
Yeah.
The answer is probably not going to be the new iPhone, right? So it's not really our government's fault for accepting corporations to fuck us over. So those corporations make a lot of money and then pay the U.S. government. And then here we are, capitalism booming. I mean, it's...
Yeah, I just think the biggest responsibility of the government is to manage their size so that their size is not a detriment to the American people.
Right. Which
like
now
that's
it is.
The way I look at it. Like a good example, like we're adding $100 trillion to our deficit every $1 trillion to our deficit every 100 days.
That's crazy.
Like we're going to be paying 100 in the next 5 years. We're going to be paying 116% of our GDP in insurance. In interest. Like that's just not a sustainable thing. Like that's just not possible, right? So I think it's the biggest thing I expect from our government is don't be the reason why I can't succeed.
Right.
And I don't expect you to be the reason I succeed.
That's right.
I still got it. Like we don't have equality of outcome because we don't have equality of effort. You can't. The government should never be the reason you don't succeed. And it's quickly becoming where they're not the reason you don't succeed, but man, they are really in the way.
Dude, let's call it what it is. It's taxation without representation.
That's exactly what it is.
That is, again, that's what's the most terrifying thing is it wasn't like this. It wasn't like this a couple of decades ago. So when I have conversations with parents and family and all that, they're like, you okay? Is everything? Yeah, things are good. Things are good. I'm blessed because we're doing certain things, X, Y, Z. But when they expect you to do certain things that they did as kids, now, were things rough in certain aspects? Of course. But I think the perception is like things are constantly getting better, but we're forgetting about the little things of, okay, well, now the government is getting more and more intelligent about how to fuck us over.
Yes.
Like they're getting really good at it. Like really good.
Because they recognize the only way that the government can exercise more control is to make people less self-sufficient.
Right. Exactly.
People dependent on the government will allow the government to do almost anything.
Yeah,
and that's the big thing why we created so I don't know if you saw my video, but we created something called the Middle Class United. I originally dubbed it the Middle Class Hedge Fund. But legally I can't say hedge fund anymore because it's actually it basically over coffee one morning I was just sitting there thinking you have hedge funds, it's 100 rich people put in $1 million each, you have $100 million hedge fund.
Right.
And I was like, well, why don't we just have $1 million people put in $500 each? And you make it so you can't put more than 500, you can't put less than 500, you can't buy multiple shares, you can only buy in once. $500, it's a one-time fee. You have 1 million people do that. You have a $500 million hedge fund, right? And I made a TikTok about that, and then proceeded to get contacted by every fund manager, every lawyer, every accountant in existence. And then we found a crew to do it that wanted to build it the way I wanted to build it. And then we created what we call what's now the Middle Class United Cooperative, which is it's a nonprofit, cooperative for us. And within the next, over the 3 months, we built the entire thing. And then within the next month, we're going to have everybody, coming in, and we're probably going to have 80 to $100 million under management in the first month. And
No
the benefit,
shit.
and the benefit is it's not about making money because everybody just spent $500, right? What happens is 25% of the profits are going to go to be spread out amongst everyone equally, right? But that's not a lot of money. Say you got 1 million people, you make $1 million, everybody gets $1. Not huge.
Right.
But then there's 50 to 60% of the profit is going to go into what kind of could be labeled like a do good fund, where it's going to be and everybody's going to vote what to do with it. So everybody gets to vote. Like we'll put out 5 different things we could do with it. Things like create a teacher scholarship, build homes, have a grant, rebuild schools, something that the government should be doing, right? But we can do, right? And then everybody votes on that, and then whatever they vote to do, we do with that profit.
Wow. It's a well thought out HOA.
But it can be. We can work on Wall Street as well.
Right.
So, because you have to think about it, 380 million Americans, about 250 million of them are middle class. If 10% of them signed up, that's
Right.
25 million people at $500 each. We'd be one of the largest. We'd be one of the largest entities on Wall Street.
That's fucking huge.
Yep, and it would all be through middle class people who gave $500 that they would have spent on random shit anyway.
Yeah, or worse so, they would have spent it into, which I got money in the stock market, but let's be honest. I mean, if you're in it for the short term, that's a long game, right? You got to be in it. You got to sit that shit in for 20 years and cross your fingers, right? Warren Buffett it. But at the same time, man, I love what you're doing because it's actually going to something. That's what's always so fascinating about Wall Street is we have all this money coming in and out. People are making billions, and you look at it like, okay, but you go like 5 blocks away from Wall Street, and you got fucking tents.
Well, that's why we set it up that way so that we could be, because what I want is people my age to be able to look at it as a grandparent and have their grandkids ask them, what did you do? And they can go to the website and say, this is what I did. This is what I participated in. We built 100 homes. We rebuilt 20 schools. We set up 10 scholarship funds. We did this. And it's a legacy for me. Yeah. It's like, for me, it's like one of the things that, like I said, for me, it was an idea, TikTok I just made.
That's crazy, dude. Luckily,
smart people did all the work.
Yeah.
And got us filed with the SEC and the IRS and set all that up. And now, I think we soft launched 2 days ago, and we're not accepting any money yet. But as far as people, we had people go to the website to put in their info to be the first to join. And within 48 hours, we had 20,000 people.
That's crazy, dude. What's the website again? Shout out.
MCU Coop. So MCUCOOP. It's MCU Coop. It's the Middle Class United Cooperative.
I love it, dude. That's such a fucking great idea, bud.
And nobody can buy in and have power because it's limited one share per Social Security number.
That's huge.
Yep.
That's huge. Yeah, I mean that you're describing what it should actually be, right? Like in terms of our government. Like that.
Well, I look at it as the next advancement of the GameStop movement. Like this is what GameStop should have done.
True.
When all these people were not united, it was like, why didn't you go directly from that to setting something like this up?
Yeah. Because that's literally what what a missed opportunity.
Exactly.
It's insane. And
they had all the heat and all the build behind it. That guy could have very easily said, I'm setting up the Middle Class United Cooperative like I'm doing. Right after that, he would have had millions of people join.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I would have been one of them. That would have been genius.
I would have been on it. I would have been on it in a hurry because I got screwed in the Robinhood shit.
Oh, did you really?
Oh, yeah. I got locked out of my Robinhood.
Fuck, man. That's crazy. That's wild. And for people that don't know, I think we need to open up our understanding a little bit more on taxes and what the government is involved in. Because, if you don't follow this stuff, you think everything's been fine for a couple decades. Little do you know, they're slowly, continuously dipping their hands into everything until you need them so much that you're just living in a country that the government runs everything. And
Well, I've made a few TikToks about that recently, about how that is the goal of a government that wants to be authoritarian, is to make you more dependent on them. And I actually put out a video this morning where people were talking about the 44% capital gains tax, and they were like, "Oh, it's just on the rich people, right?" And I said, "Yeah, well, if you remember income tax with the 16th Amendment, that was only taxing the top 1% of Americans, 1% of their income." And now the average American pays between 27 and 50%. And then if you look at Social Security, when it originally started in 1973, I think, or might have been earlier. I think it was 1937. Sorry.
Yeah.
They said what we're going to do is we're going to take 1% of your first $3,000, and it will never account for more than 6% of your annual income. Now the average American pays 12 to 17% of their income to Social Security. It was like, guys, the hardest part is getting the new tax created.
Right.
So from there, they can just modify it. Yeah. But but they sell it to you by saying we're going after the rich people.
Well, and the problem too with that is we don't get a chance to vote on this stuff. That's the issue.
Exactly.
We're only able to vote a couple times, right? Your local government and the presidential election. Aside from that, essentially over the years, we've entrusted these clowns to do whatever's in our best interest. But they're hoping, and they're right, they're hoping no one pays attention.
Yep.
Because that's what's happening is the vast majority of human beings, and let's be honest, dude, it's tough. I mean, obviously even you, which you base a lot of your content on, it's tough to do. You know what I mean? It's tough to keep up with shit. So the average human...
Bullshit? Oh, my Lord.
Because there's so much bullshit. There's so much bullshit.
There's so much.
And then on top of that, you're trying to like figure out, how do I pay mortgage this month? Like, what do I do I got to fill up my tank. I got to go to work. Like, I'm dealing with work issues and spouse issues, and I got kids. And there's a lot of stuff, and I know it's a challenge. And that's why I always say there's a bandwidth that you got to have in your head. And if your bandwidth is, let's say, for instance, out of points, if you only have 100 points in your head.
Right.
If 55 of those points is like Netflix and YouTube videos and just consuming stuff that isn't important, maybe put that aside for a little bit, because now we're in a very interesting time to where we can make some serious decisions, because there's enough people standing up and having these conversations and having talks. It almost kind of feels like it's like 1955. It's like we're a couple years away from like, it's revolution time, bro. Like they need to learn, like they've crossed the line. But if a lot of people just spend a lot of time focusing on the wrong stuff, like Diddy getting evicted and where is he at? And like, if you focus all your attention on that, bro, and you get deflected, because they're very good at it, right? Epstein Island, like they're very good at deflecting. So, but if you focus on the wrong things for just a couple years, next thing you know, boom, how am I paying 70% on taxes now? How am I paying 80? How am I paying 90? Next thing you know, minimum wage is the same, but somehow we're paying more taxes. Like, dude, we got to be careful. You got to pay attention to this stuff.
The government is the masters of burying the lead.
Ooh, so good.
They are masters of that. It's just and that's why I said one solution. I think any government official, I said a rule should be that any government official, when he's talking to the media or he's talking to the American people, it should be assumed that they are under oath.
Ooh, that's
There
good.
is no reason an elected representative should not be under oath when speaking to the American people. Like,
That's
there's
very
just no good. I'd love to hear an argument from some representative to tell me why he should be able to lie to the American people.
That's so true.
And it'd be like, here's the thing: if you don't want to lie to the American people, that's fine, but shut the fuck up.
Right.
Like, you don't get to come on TV. Like, you don't have to tell me the truth, but you don't get to come on TV and tell me something that's not true.
And lie. Yeah.
Yeah. Just if you can't tell me the truth, you don't get to do interviews.
Yeah.
You don't get to do town halls. That's perfectly fine.
Yeah. Nothing wrong with that.
I don't think you should have the ability to come on TV and tell me something that is not true. Because you are a representative. You are supposed to represent me. And how can you represent me when you don't tell me the truth?
Exactly. Yeah. It's a very shitty relationship that we're in. Yeah. And I think they've been getting...
It is an abusive relationship. We are in an abusive relationship with our government.
Yeah. Like, if there was an ability, like, we would be on Jerry Springer with the U.S. government. It'd be the U.S. citizens figuring out the U.S. government is having our baby. Like, it would be this crazy Jerry Springer episode. Yeah, man. No, you make some great points, man. You definitely put out a lot of great content. And I can't believe we're almost at 2 hours. So this has been good, man. I could probably talk to you for a while. We got to set this thing up. You, me, and
we'll get it going.
Yeah, that'd be
Now
cool.
that I'm back in Florida, we'll get us all together. As long as Ant, I don't know what Ant's up to, but I'm sure he'll be available. And Chris, obviously, he works there, so we can do that.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. Everything down below, but give your website one more shout out, and where can people find you on
Oh,
social media?
so it's the Middle Class United Cooperative. The website is www. I don't even think we need that anymore. MCUCoop.com. And then you can find me on TikTok at the Older Millennial Point One. There are 89 fake accounts pretending to be me right now. But it's the account that has, I think I'm at 950,000 followers or something. You can find me on X. I am either the Older Millennial or Team FU Joe. It's not against Joe Biden. My name is Joe. It's an inside joke. But yeah, those are my main platforms. I don't really use Instagram or Facebook.
That's all. Well, what happens if TikTok gets banned? Where are you gonna go?
Then I
Just X?
then I use a VPN, and I'm the Older Millennial in Spain.
I love it. All right, cool. Well, Joe, dude, thanks so much for the time, man. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
And keep doing what you do, bud.
Same here.
All right, bye.